Yahweh bless you all. We were on chapter 11. In this translation, there's no chapter 11. However, there's another translation in which um, they kind of split one of these into two, so they make that one the 11. But so we would go to chapter 12. And I'll begin with verse 1 of chapter 12, and it says, before all these things, Hanoch was concealed, and there was no son of Adam who knew where he was concealed, where he had been, or what had happened to him. Remember that Hanoch is a representation, and some even believe is one of the two witnesses himself. If he were actually one of the two witnesses, it would be through reincarnation, not as Christians believe it, Hanoch coming back from the clouds, coming down, and for everybody to see something like coming out of Hollywood. So it would be pretty much reincarnated if it was Hanoch himself. Either way, Hanoch is a representation of one of the two witnesses. Specifically, the witness like Moshe, who comes from the tribe of Yosef, the tribe of Yahusef, which was given to him while he was in prison. So before Yahusef became pretty much the king of the world, second to the Pharaoh, who actually had no right next to Yahusef because of the languages. Yahusef knew Hebrew, which Pharaoh didn't, and just because of that, Yahusef had more languages than Pharaoh, and that meant that it was his, even though, well, Yahusef was not from Egypt, but the way people would rule in Egypt was by knowing all the languages of the world. A malach taught all the languages of the world, or gave miraculously, like in Shavuot, through the gift of tongues, gave to Yahusef all the tongues of the world. So Yahusef was able to go up the stairs all the way to Pharaoh, and then spoke in Hebrew, which Pharaoh didn't know. So that was a proof that Yahusef was the one who was supposed to rule according to the rules that they had. So this part is interesting because Hanoch represents the witness like Moshe, and the witness like Moshe is a descendant of Yahusef. Yahusef, right before he became the king of the world, when he fed the whole world through those 7 years of the skinny cows, before he did that, he was in jail for 12 years. So he was hidden, he was concealed, just like Hanoch was concealed before this moment. Just like Moshe, who is also a representation, obviously, of the witness like Moshe, was concealed 3 months after his birth, and then concealed pretty much 40 years in Pharaoh's house. The man that Yahweh was going to use to bring all the plagues to Egypt was actually in Pharaoh's house. That's how perfect Yahweh is, that the enemy does not see it coming, even if it's right before his eyes. So Moshe also was in prison 10 years, according to the book of Yashar. So before Yahweh chose Moshe, or well, before Yahweh spoke to Moshe for him to go and take Israel out of Egypt, he was concealed in a prison 10 years. So Yahusef, 12 years. And now we see here Hanoch was concealed before, well, what we are about to read. So it's kind of not like with the two witnesses, they would be concealed, not necessarily in prison, because they will end up in prison after their testimony for 10 days. They will be in prison before they are killed. So that's the part of prison that they will have to go through. But what I am saying is that they would be hidden from the world until the moment when Yahweh decides for them to speak to the world, and for the world to actually hear them. Not necessarily listen, but they will hear the words at least. So before all these things, Hanoch was concealed, and there was no son of Adam who knew where he was concealed, where he had been, or what had happened to him. He passed his days with the set apart ones, and did all his activity with the watchers. He passed his days with the pure ones and did all his activity with the watchers. Thus, I, Hanok, was starting to bless Yahweh, the sovereign of the majesty, the king of the ages. And look, behold, the watchers called me, Hanok, the scribe. Hanok, the scribe. So he was called a scribe. He was writing this book. He wrote the calendar, just like Moshe wrote the Torah. So Moshe was a scribe, Hanok, a scribe. We know that Mashiach didn't write anything. He spoke and others wrote because he is the word. However, the last is the voice. So to write a word is like saying a word. So a scribe is like the voice. And therefore, Moshe was a scribe, Hanok was a scribe. And therefore, the last would also be connected with writing. Then Yahweh said to me, Hanok, scribe of righteousness, go tell the watchers of heaven who have deserted the heights of the sky, their set apart everlasting station, and who have polluted themselves with women, and have done as the sons of Adam do, by taking to themselves wives, and have forged a great work of corruption on the earth. And let them know that there shall not be any shalom. There shall not be any shalom or redemption from their error for them. And as they rejoiced for their offspring, they shall look at the slaughter of their beloved, and they shall lament for the destruction of their sons, and shall petition forever, but there shall not be any favor or shalom for them. So they were completely condemned for what they did. Like I have explained in the past, there is a great difference between angels and humans. Angels, once they were created with all the knowledge, at least for that which they were supposed to do, but at least the knowledge that there is a creator and other things, of course. But when it comes to humans, we come to the world with no knowledge. So we go from zero, and we are supposed to seek the Almighty. But because of that ignorance from the beginning, is that Yahweh allows error pretty much, in the sense that that's why he came to pay for our sins. Because there would be some who, after sinning, would recognize the sin and receive wisdom through the error and obviously the recognition, and therefore would grow higher in the sense of the knowledge that comes from experience is way better than the knowledge that may come from just reading something. Like there's one, like if you read something and then you put it in practice, it will help you to know why that which you read in, and we're talking about scriptures in this case, is true. And that's the reason why we should do it and listen to scriptures and fulfill the commandments if we put it in practice. Because faith without works, as we know, is dead. As I was saying, humans, pretty much, even though we were made lesser than angels, we will become greater because of the experience that we receive through this reality that the angels know nothing about, in the sense that they came from a different reality, higher reality. So they were given already knowledge, and therefore there was no sense for them to sin. When it comes to humans, obviously after Adam, we were born in a reality of ignorance, of darkness, and we are seeking the light, while angels were born in a reality of light, and then they sought darkness, and that's why they cannot receive shalom. So I hope that's clear, because it's very important. Because some people may say that Yahweh is not merciful because of this, that he was being mean or whatever, but it is because of the place from which they came. The malachim, the watchers, and the knowledge that they already had. Unlike humans, I repeat, we are supposed to grow, and we are supposed to also learn through experience. which is a higher learning than just theory. So I'll continue with chapter 13. Then Hanoch, passing on, said to Azael, who we know becomes Azazel, as I have explained in the previous study, you shall not obtain shalom. Look once again how Hanoch first speaks to Azazel, because he became the worst of all of them, even though Shamhasa was the leader, the main leader. Then Hanoch, passing on, said to Azazel, you shall not obtain shalom. A great sentence is gone forth against you. It shall bind you. Also, something that I haven't mentioned, I guess, that much in this study, which I guess is important because I do mention it a lot in the other studies. Every time we read scriptures, I mention about, like, depending on the context, about Samael or Halel or Azazel, the three Satans. There are three Satans, while Christians believe there's only one, and while Jewish people believe there's only one. And it's interesting that the Jewish people think is Samael, while the Christians believe is Halel, but they are two different entities. And then we have Azazel, which is mentioned in Leviticus. So there are three Satans really. And one is connected with the flesh, another one with the soul, and another one with the spirit. And therefore with different entities also, demons, fallen angels, and evil spirits, which are very similar to demons, but they're different. And also they are connected to different types of sin. Like I have said, pretty much Samael is connected to the sins of males, like the weaknesses of males pretty much are connected to what Samael promotes or causes in the influence that he tries to put in this reality, while the sins, the weaknesses of females are connected to Halel, vanity, and other things. And then the sins of Azazel are connected, which are pretty much rebellion, are connected to the children. So like father, mother, and then the child. So Samael, Lucifer, or Halel. Yeah, just so you know, Halel is the Hebrew name for the one they call Lucifer, which is a name from the Latin. So in this book, the one that they will mention the most is Azazel, even though we will see a reference to Halel, but with a different name that we will speak about later on. So then Hanoch, passing on, said to Azael, you shall not obtain shalom. A great sentence is gone forth against you. It shall bind you. Neither shall there be for you any truce, favor, nor intercession on account of the unrighteousness that you have taught, and on account of every act of irreverence, violence, and error which you have taught to the sons of Adam. Remember that Mashiach is the son. So Azazel is the opposite of Mashiach. Azazel, that's why Azazel was represented by Barabbas, who was put right next to Yahushua HaMashiach. Yahushua, the son of the Father. Barabbas means son of the Father. So Mashiach next to Barabbas were like the two male goats of Leviticus 16 that were brought for Yom Kippur. One was sacrificed for Yahweh and the other one was released in the desert for Azazel. So they are opposites. So if Mashiach is the truth, then Azazel is the lie, the error. So he is the one who will manifest as the son of sin, the son of perdition, the lawless man, because Mashiach came to fulfill the law. This other one claims there is no law to fulfill anymore because it was destroyed. That's what they claim. Those who follow pretty much that doctrine of the spirit of error. So that's why it says, neither shall there be for you any truce, favor, nor intercession on account of the unrighteousness that you have taught. Mashiach came to teach the true doctrine. He, Azazel came to teach falsehood, and on account of every act of irreverence, violence, and error which you have taught to the sons of Adam. Then, departing from him, I spoke to them all together, and they all feared and became terrified, and trembling seized them, beseeching me to write for them a petition that they might obtain forgiveness for their errors. This is an amazing thing that happened here, and Yahweh will mention it like soon. But to make an introduction, we saw how Hanoch was called a scribe. Now Malachim are calling to Hanoch for him to go and represent them before Yahweh. But Yahweh created angels for them to represent us before him. So here everything was upside down, and Yahweh is about to notice it and mention it as part of the condemnation, or the reasons why these angels needed condemnation, because they were turning everything upside down. They were asking a human to represent them, a human to intercede for them, which was not the way that it was supposed to be in the beginning. However, through this act, Yahweh is pretty much prophesying that that's how it would become at the end. We would raise up over the Malachim. So that's why the Malachim saw Hanoch as the one that could save them. Because, as I have also explained, first and last not only come for earth, but also for the heavens, to unite heaven and earth. Mashiach came as a human to die for the souls of humans. The last comes also as a human to die for the earth, the land, which is the dust that Yahweh took to make the body of humans. So the first comes for the souls, the last comes for the bodies, pretty much. That's why the chosen few who receive first and last don't have to die at all, while those who only receive the first and don't accept the last will have to die, meaning give their bodies, but their souls will be resurrected in a new body, justified as the people, the many. But the point that I was trying to make was that Mashiach came directly from the Father through a virgin to become the only way to the heavens for humans. The last happens to be the Malach Mikael, according to Daniel 12:1 and other parts of scriptures. So the Malach Mikael will come as a human and accept Mashiach in order for him to be able to bring another type of salvation, in the sense that he will be able to open a door for the Malachim. Remember that Yahushua said that the days of the Son of Man, which is the last, would be like the days of Noah. So the Son of Man, the last, Mikael, would be like Noah, a preacher. And he would preach during the end times about the end, and he would prepare an ark, but in this case, a spiritual ark, through the wood or the tree in which Mashiach was sacrificed. Therefore, through the sacrifice of Mashiach, the last is able to make an ark, and that ark really is done by Yahweh, which would be the set apart place, the prepared place of Revelation 12. But my point is that through the teaching, he pretty much gives a spot to each of the 144,000 within the ark that Yahweh is building to save the chosen few, or that he built already, pretty much the prepared place. But spiritually, the chosen, the witness like Moshe will give the doctrine, and the chosen few will be pretty much the ark, or within the ark, not to die during the Great Tribulation. Remember that in the ark, there were not humans only, but also animals. Like I have said, humans, it is written, were made in the image and likeness of the Most High. In the Gnostic books, we get to understand that animals were created in the image and likeness of the Malachim, the angels. So the fact that there were animals in the ark of Noah is key. Plus, Yahweh said in the book of Haggai that this time he will not only destroy the earth, but he will also destroy the heavens. So just like during the flood, there was nobody else other than the ones that were in the ark. They were all destroyed. Yahweh said that he will do the same not only in the earth, but also in the heavens. So a bunch of angels will rebel and they will be destroyed and sent to the fire. But there will be some who will have to accept Mashiach through Michael in order to be able to enter that which will take them to the next reality. Because it is also written in the New Covenant that the Malachim were not subjected to the next world, meaning the Malachim were not made for the coming world. They were made for this reality because they were supposed to be a representation of the Almighty. Since the Almighty is so high above this reality, Yahweh created a reality in the middle to connect both realities, the highest one, the third heaven, and the first heaven, that of humans. So Malachim would help humans to connect with the Father as a representation of the Father. But once the Father is one with the humans, we don't need this reality, because once the Father is connected to humanity directly, there is no need for angels. But Yahweh made a way for the angels to enter through what he is going to do with the last, the witness like Moshe, who happens to be Michael. So pretty much Yahushua gives authority to Michael in order for him to lead not only humans, but Malachim to the ark so that they can enter the next reality. In Judaism, there are several stories regarding stuff like that, but one that I think is very important is that of Eliyahu. In Judaism, it is taught that Eliyahu was a malach called Sandalphon, and that he asked the Almighty, unlike these malachim, these watchers who were just rebellious and decided to come down and well, do everything that they did. Unlike them, Sandalphon, according to Judaism, was a malach who went to the Father and asked the Father how he could serve humans in a better way, in a closer way. So Yahweh told him that he would make him a priest. So he sent him to the earth and he became Pinchas, a descendant of Aharon. And then he would come back and became Eliyahu. So he became a priest pretty much in order to help humanity. But by doing that, he also became a leader of humanity. So he received a higher blessing, a huge blessing, which the rebellious Malachim will never receive because they did it in a rebellious way. I hope that is all understood. And I'm saying all of that because of the fact that here the angels are now seeking Hanoch for him to help them. And Hanoch represents the witness like Moshe. So then departing from him, I spoke to them all together, and they all feared and became terrified, and trembling seized them, beseeching me to write for them a petition that they might obtain forgiveness for their errors, and that I might make the memorial of their prayer ascend up before the sovereign Yahweh, the power in heaven. Because they could not themselves thenceforward address him. After they sinned, after they came down, they were in a similar situation as humans, not being able to go up to the heavens and speak directly to the Almighty. And they were, we could say, even in an even worse position, since they had known that, and through their rebellion, they were cut off. So because they could not themselves thenceforward address him, nor raise up their eyes to heaven on account of the shame for the offenses for which they were judged. Then I wrote a memorial of their prayer and all their supplications for their lives, for everything that they had done, and for the subject of their plea, that there might be forgiveness and long life for them. Proceeding on, I continued over the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, which is south of Hermon, to the west of it. Hermon, the name which it received because of the pact that the Malachim made, which is south of Hermon, to the west of it. And I was also, the place called Dan is interesting because Dan means judge. They were being judged. So that would be the reason why that land appears there. Obviously, it had no connection yet to the 12 tribes, for the 12 tribes had not come yet. Proceeding on, I continue over the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, which is south of Hermon to the west of it. And I was reading the scroll where I noted their petitions until I fell asleep. And look, a dream came to me, and visions appeared above me, until I lifted my eyes to the gates of the palace of the heavens, and I saw a vision of punishment. And a voice came and told me, tell it to the sons of heaven and reprove them. When I awoke, I went to them, all being collected together, sat weeping in the fountain of the weeping, which is situated between Lebanon and Zenith, with their faces veiled. With their faces veiled. I related in their presence all the visions that I had seen in my dream, and began to utter these words of righteousness and of vision, reproving the watchers of heaven. Chapter 14, verse 1. This is the scroll of the words of righteousness and of the reproof of the watchers who are from eternity, according to that which he who is pure and great commanded in the vision. I perceived in my dream what I am now speaking with the tongue of flesh and with my breath, which the power has put into the mouth of men, that they might converse with it, and for them to understand with the heart. This is important because a lot of people believe that they understand with the brain, but we understand with the heart. And remember that wisdom is connected to the first pillar, to Mashiach Yahushua. The second pillar, which is the witness like Moshe, is connected first to understanding. Like I always say, Yahushua is the brain, the last is the heart. So wisdom comes to the brain, but then we understand it with the heart. So that's why also there are two parts of the heart, because it is through separation that we are able to get to understand the wisdom that we may have received. And once we connect both, we get knowledge, as the knowledge that I was mentioning, through experience, not just through theory. So, and for them to understand with the heart, as Yahweh has created and granted to the sons of Adam, the privilege of comprehending the word of understanding. So he has created and granted to me the privilege of reproving the watchers, the offspring of heaven. Watchers, I have written your petition, and in my vision, it has been shown me that what you request will not be granted to you as long as the world endures. Judgment has been passed upon you. It will not be granted to you. For from this time forward, you shall never ascend into heaven, because he has said that he will bind you in the prisons of the earth as long as the age endures. But before these things, you shall look at the destruction of all your beloved ones, your beloved sons, and the riches of your beloved ones and of your sons you shall not possess. Rather, they shall fall before you by the sword of destruction. So neither shall your plea for them nor for yourselves be granted. Likewise, despite your tears and prayers, you will receive nothing whatever contained in the writing that I have written. A vision appeared to me thus. Look, in that vision, clouds invited me, and a fog called me, and flashes of lightning and thunders impelled and pressed me forwards, while the winds in the vision made me fly, lifting me into the heights. They elevated me aloft to the heavens. I proceeded in until I arrived at a wall of a building built with pelting ice rocks. So listen to this. He was taken to what many believe would be the wall of ice that surrounds the earth. So they elevated me aloft to the heavens. I proceeded in until I arrived at a wall of a building built with pelting ice rocks. surrounded and enclosed completely with flames of fire, which began to frighten me. Remember that heaven, because, well, it's talking about reaching heaven. However, mentioning the ice rocks as in the pretty much the border between earth and heaven, which would be the firmament. And as we know, the firmament was called Shamaim because it is made through Esh and Maim. Esh, Maim, Shamaim. Esh is fire, Maim is water. So this is the only reality in which everything is separated. And fire is an enemy of water in the sense that fire, well, depending on how much fire or how much water we have, one will take care of the other. But in the heavens, everything is one. So fire and water act together. And that's why the heavens are called Shamaim, because they are a mix of fire and water. While in earth, everything is separated in twos. So that's why fire acts as the counterpart of water. So that is why also Yahushua came as the water of life, and the last is coming as the consuming fire. For once they all, the first and last become one, like we just read in Ezekiel 37, when the first and last become one, that's when the reality of heaven will manifest on earth. For heaven, I repeat, Shamaim is the mix of fire and water. So when the fire of the last is mixed with the water of the first, that's the time when the heavenly reality will manifest. So that is why it just mentions ice rocks, and then it says that it was surrounded and enclosed completely with flames of fire, which began to frighten me. I entered through the flames of fire until I drew nigh to a spacious house built also with stones and pelting ice rocks. He's about to mention the prisons where those malachim would be sent, whose walls were like sheets of stone. All were made with snow, and the ground was made of snow. Its roof was like lightning bolts and thunder, and among them were cherubim of fire in a stormy sky. A burning flame. The fact that it says cherubim is also interesting because, once again, the earth is surrounded by a wall of ice. If you keep going after that wall of ice, you will reach a wall, which would be the actual dome, the firmament, which the system, the enemy, the Illuminati, the United States, they have tried to go through that wall by sending bombs up and also using everything they have to make holes through it. And they have realized that they cannot completely, well, they haven't been able to go through completely, for it's way too thick and it restores itself with time. So they haven't been able to go through it, which is what Nimrod wanted to do during the time of the Tower of Babel. But remember also that Yahweh said that he's sitting over the circle of the earth, circle, which some translate as ball, but is not right. Circle is two-dimensional, a ball is three-dimensional, and there is a Hebrew word for ball. However, the word there is for circle. So Yahweh is sitting over the circle of the earth, and the scripture also speaks of the four corners of the earth. So there are four corners: north, south, east, and west. And not only that, Yahweh says that his throne is the heavens and the earth is his footstool. So it is written that around the throne of Yahweh there are four cherubim with the face of a man, of an eagle, of an ox, and a lion. So four of them. Because since the earth and the heavens are the footstool and the throne, then that's why the earth has four corners, because on each of them there is a cherub. So there are four cherubim on each of the four corners of the earth, just like there are four cherubim covering the throne of Yahweh, as we read in Revelation. So its roof was like lightning bolts and thunder, and among them were cherubim of fire in a stormy sky. A burning flame surrounded all its walls completely, and its doors were made of blazing fire. When I entered into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and cold as ice. Imagine that, to be cold and hot at the same time. So, as I have also mentioned, when it comes to the reality of the Father, which is obviously above that of the angels, there is no left and right. There is no question and answer. It is all one. You haven't asked, you already got the answer of whatever you were thinking to ask, because they are exactly one. And therefore, this is possible the closer we get to a spiritual reality. The closer we get to a spiritual reality, and also obviously the higher body we receive for a higher reality, the more things we'll be able to experience. But also it's important to understand that the reality that Yahweh made for us is this reality, because it is the reality in which we can actually enjoy things, in the sense that you cannot enjoy eating unless you're hungry. You cannot enjoy the beautiful thing of receiving a revelation unless you actually lack knowledge. So if you know all things, and well, a bunch of other things that I just mentioned, life would be kind of boring, or not boring, static. So Yahweh made this reality and time and space so that there can be movement, so that there can be change, for Yahweh does not change. I hope that is understood. Hopefully, at least some. If not, ask your questions. So, a burning flame surrounding all its walls completely, and its doors were made of a blazing fire. When I entered into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and cold as ice. In it were none of the pleasures of life. In it were none of the pleasures of life. Blessed be the Most High, what I just mentioned. The beauty of this reality that Yahweh created for us, so that we may be able to enjoy the fact of getting a little bit of hot when we were cold, or being able to drink something cold when we were hot. Those are things that come from the Father, not the being hot, but yet the getting a little bit of a cold drink, for instance. So those pleasures of this reality that we can enjoy because of how Yahweh made this reality, with tools, hot and cold, light and darkness, right and left, etc. But also, sadly, that is the reason why there is darkness in a spiritual sense. That's why there is sin. So Yahweh will be able to take us to a higher reality in which we will enjoy all the good things of this one without falling prey to the bad ones, like darkness, sin, and all of that. So when I enter into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and cold as ice. In it were none of the pleasures of life. It consumed me in fear, and a fearful shaking seized me. Also, it's important to understand that a lot of people just think of hell as fire, as hot, but we see that cold is also used. So, and we must understand that scriptures mentions confusion and shame pretty much more than anything when it comes to hell. So yeah, there will be pain and torture, but most of that pain and torture will be once people know what they missed, once people know what they rejected. That shame and that confusion of being away from the light, away from the truth, away from all goodness, that will be hell, without any fire or any ice to make them feel something extra. The fact of being away from the Father, which is what they pretty much chose, that will be enough. For all good things come from the Father. All good things come from the Father. Therefore, once they reject the Father, they won't receive anything that they may feel as good. So it consumed me in fear, and a fearful shaking seized me. Violently agitated and trembling, I fell upon my face, and a vision was revealed to me. And there I saw a door which opened before me, and there was another house more spacious than the former, erected all of flames of fire. All of it exceeded the other one in splendor, honor, and majesty, and in magnitude that I cannot describe to you either the splendor or the extent of it. Its floor was made of fire, and its superior parts were made of thunders and lightnings, and its roof was made of blazing fire. It was uncovered for me, and I saw that it contained an exalted throne, the appearance of which was like that of crystal, and whose circumference resembled the orb of the brilliant luminary, meaning the sun. So he was taken to a higher realm, better than the previous one, like a palace, and he had a throne. It says the appearance of which was like that of crystal. Remember that scriptures tells us in the book of Revelation about gold like crystal, so pure, so clean that it looks like crystal. Also, it says the circumference resembled the orb of the brilliant luminary. So it had a circle of light so strong, just like the sun. And we could say like fire, just like it is written in the book of Daniel, in the book of Revelation. What I mean is that they were saying the same thing, but they all said it in their own way. One said that there was a rainbow around the throne. And remember that the rainbow was the covenant that Yahweh made with Noah, telling him that he wouldn't destroy the earth with a flood anymore, yet he would destroy with a fire. So the rainbow reminds us of the coming fire. So they go together. Plus, a rainbow appears through the reflection of the light of the sun in the firmament, which acts like a mirror. So the rainbow, the fire, and now the sun, they all connect with the last who comes as the throne of Yahweh, where the presence of Yahweh will sit. So the last comes as the throne, who happens to be the Son of Righteousness, and that is the consuming fire, who comes to confirm the covenant, like Noah, when the rainbow happened. So he comes reminded, remembering pretty much that that the Almighty will destroy the earth with fire. So the appearance of which was like that of crystal, and whose circumference resembled the orb of the brilliant luminary. And I had a view of the cherubim. Over this mighty throne, rivers of flaming fire issued. Rivers of flaming fire. So it confirms what I was saying, the consuming fire coming from the throne. Because Yahushua came as the high priest. The last comes as the king. Remember, like I have said, since this book was written for us in our time, it focuses more on the last than on the first. In fact, the first appears kind of hidden. He appears within it, but in a hidden way throughout the whole book. So over this mighty throne, rivers of flame and fire issue. And I could not bear the look towards there. Just like when a person looks at the sun during noon, one cannot bear to look at it for a long time, even for seconds. So if one cannot look at the sun, who happens to be just a messenger, a creation of the Father, imagine looking straight at the throne of the Most High. So I could not bear to look towards there. The great worth or honor was seated in the throne. In Hebrew, because of the chosen words here, I would think that the word used is kabod in Hebrew. And that is a word connected to the last, so it continues with the confirmation of what it's saying. For the kabod of Yahweh, his honor, will sit on the throne, just like the Ruach was within Mashiach. The great worth was seated in the throne, whose robe was more brilliant than the luminary orb, and whiter than any snow. As we know, Yahushua came to bring forgiveness of sin, to turn whatever red like scarlet, which represents sin, into white as snow, which represents pureness. So, whose robe was more brilliant than the luminary orb, son of righteousness, and whiter than any snow. No envoy was capable, no messenger, no malach was capable of penetrating to view the face of him, the radiance and the irradiator. In this case, it is also important that even though the angels know about the creator, even them are not able to see him. They just see a representation of him. So we see it here, part of it. No envoy was capable of penetrating to view the face of him, the radiance and the irradiator, nor could any mortal look at him. A fire was flaming around him. A fire was flaming around him. Like I said, like we read in Daniel 7. I will read this from Hebrew 1:3, verse 3. Who being the brightness of the steam and the exact representation of his substance, and sustaining all by the word of his power, having made a cleansing of our sins through himself, sat down at the right hand of the greatness on high. Nor could any mortal look at him. A fire was flaming around him. A fire also of great extent continued to rise up before him, so that not one of those who surrounded him was capable of approaching him, and the 10,000 times 10,000 who were before him. All right, so going back to 24. A fire also of great extent continued to rise up before him, so that not one of those who surrounded him was capable of approaching him, and the 10,000 times 10,000 who were before him. Though for him pure consultation was needless, yet the purities of the pure ones who were near him did not go away from him either by night or by day, nor did they separate from him. I until this moment was prostrated on my face trembling. Then Yahweh with his own mouth called me, saying, approach hither, Hanok, and listen to my set apart word, to my pure word. And one of the pure ones, one of the set apart ones came to me. So meaning a certain type of malach who is set apart from the rest of the malachim, like the 7 main malachim who surround or who are the eyes of Yahweh and who are above all the malachim of the second heaven when it comes to how close they are to Yahweh. So, and one of the set apart ones came to me, awoke me, making me get up and draw near even to the entrance, and my eye was directed to the ground. And when it comes to this part that it said, though for him pure consultation was needless, I will read Romans 11:34. Romans 11:34 says, for who has known the mind of Yahweh, or who has become his counselor? So the point here, he had 10,000 times 10,000 around him before him, yet he does not need any counseling. Of course, he knows all things. However, he shows humility by asking the Malachim, by asking Mashiach, as we see in Genesis and in other parts of scriptures. So that is the Almighty showing humility, that even though he doesn't need any counseling, he still asks or includes Mashiach, the Ruach, and then also the Malachim when it comes to judgment in this reality. So then Ephesians 1:11 says, in whom also we did obtain an inheritance, being previously ordained according to the purpose of him working all matters according to the counsel of his desire. The counsel of his desire. So what is his counsel? His own will. So he pretty much, that would mean that his ruach is his counsel, because his ruach is his will. When he willed to do whatever, when he had a will, that's when the ruach emanated from him. So his will is the ruach, and therefore it's just like a wife who helps the head, who is the male, when it comes to decisions. So according to the counsel of his desire. So he had a will, and then he does everything according to that will which he had at the beginning. And I mean beginning, when he decided to create time. So going back to Hanoch. So I guess we were, and one of the pure ones came to me, awoke me, making me get up and draw near even to the entrance, and my eyes were directed to the ground. So then we go to chapter 15. So chapter 15, verse 1. Then addressing me, he responded and spoke to me, and I heard his voice. Hear and do not be afraid, O righteous Hanoch. You scribe of righteousness, approach hither and hear my voice. Go say to the watchers of heaven who have sent you to pray for them. You ought to pray for men and not men for you. This is what I was saying earlier. They were supposed to pray for us, meaning intercede for us. That is why when they rebelled, not the only reason, but that is why there was a need, according to the will of the Most High, for Mashiach to come to become the only mediator. For before Mashiach came and died for our sins, angels, malachim, were mediating, but they were not doing a great job. So much so that they asked a human to become an intermediary, for them. So hear and do not be afraid, O righteous Hanoch, you scribe of righteousness, approach hither and hear my voice. Go say to the watchers of heaven who have sent you to pray for them. You ought to pray for men and not men for you. Wherefore have you forsaken the lofty and pure heaven which endures forever, and have lain with women, have defiled yourselves with the daughters of Adam, and have taken to yourselves wives like the sons of the earth, and have procreated giants? So important to understand the reason why angels were created, but then how Mashiach came to become the intercessor, the only one, only way to the Father. And that's why then we begin a war against principalities and pretty much those malachim who wanted to remain as the only ones in the middle to be able to control men and receive worship from humans. So Yahweh cut that by bringing Mashiach and becoming himself the only way to the Father. You ought to pray for men and not men for you. So that is also a representation of the last praying for a certain part of Malachim. Wherefore have you forsaken the lofty and pure heaven which endures forever, and have lain with women, and have defiled yourselves with the daughters of Adam, and have taken to yourselves wives like the sons of the earth, and have procreated giants? You being spiritual, set apart ones, living a life which is eternal, which is important. Like I was saying, they were created only for this time, not for the coming world. That's why they need to enter. If they want to go to the next world, they need to accept Messiah through Michael. So the thing that is said here has to do with the fact that they were given life from way before humans were created till the very end of this reality of humans. So their life in comparison to humans is eternal, for they have lived and they would live throughout all of this reality while humans would come and go. Not only that, since they were given eternal life right away, not like humans, which is part of the reasons why they were under condemnation, for they not only had knowledge, they had eternal life already. Humans had temporal life and ignorance from birth, lack of knowledge. So because of that, Yahweh sent a redemption, salvation for humans. But Malachim, who had all life, all knowledge, rejected that knowledge, and that life deserved nothing. So even though they have eternal life, they will enter the lake of fire, first hell, and then the lake of fire when we enter eternity. For since they already have eternal life, yet they won't be able to be part of the next world, they will be in the lake of fire eternity for an eternity. So you being spiritual, set apart ones, living a life which is eternal, have polluted yourselves with the blood of women, and have procreated with the blood of the flesh, and like the sons of Adam, have lusted after flesh and blood, as do those who die and perish. Therefore have I given to them wives, pretty much because men perish. That is the reason why Yahweh gave men wives. If Adam were to die, then everything would have stopped there. But since he was able to have a child through Eve, then everything continued after Adam died. So since men were going to die, Yahweh separated the female from the men so that they could come together to procreate, multiply, and therefore life in this reality would continue regardless of death. But since Malachim were eternal, they weren't given wives. So they envied something of men who were in a reality of darkness. And when they entered this darkness, they rejected pretty much the light. So therefore I have given to them wives, that they might impregnate them and to procreate sons from them, and so that they might not be absent upon the earth. That's why it was not good for men to be alone, and Yahweh made Eve, Chava. But as to you, ye were from the beginning made spiritual, living an eternal life, immortal for all the generations of the world. Immortal for all the generations of the world. So while all the generations of this reality of humans would be going on, they would have life. So that also confirms what I was saying regarding the coming reality. Hebrews 2:5. It says, for it is not to messengers or to the Malachim that he has subjected the world to come, concerning which we speak. Hebrews 2:5. Let me look for it here. For he has not put the world to come, of which we speak, in subjection to Malachim. So, meaning the next world, the world to come, will be subjected to humans. Unlike this world, which was subjected to angels. And that's why the God of this world, as they say, is Halel, is Lucifer, because the world of humans was subjected to angels, but the next one will be to humans. So if angels wanted to go to the next one, they would have to become humans first. Hope that's clear. And I know it's also very new to some when it comes to what is taught in Christianity, which is completely different. In Judaism would be accepted a little bit easier, for they do have the knowledge of angels coming and becoming humans. So going back to Hanok. So, but as to you, you were from the beginning made spiritual, living an eternal life, immortal for all the generations of the world. Therefore, I did not make wives for you, because being spiritual, your dwelling is in heaven. And females are represented by the earth. So that would be another connection why there were no wives for the Malachim, because they were from heaven. Wives would be connected to the earth, and therefore he made them for humans, for men. So therefore I did not make wives for you, because being spiritual, your dwelling is in heaven. Now the giants who have been born of spirit and of flesh, which is the issue, They are an abomination. Now the giants who have been born of spirit and of flesh shall be called upon earth evil spirits, which is what I was mentioning earlier. There are demons, there are evil spirits. They are different. Evils, I mean, demons were made from the beginning with a purpose through Samael. It is said with Lilith. While evil spirits came from the bodies of the giants, the abomination that was created through the mixing of angels and humans, spirit and flesh. So they became evil spirits because they were spirits of the flesh, fleshy spirits, in the sense that sin is in the flesh. The inclination to do evil is in the flesh. So by something spiritual mixing with something so evil as the flesh, they became evil spirits. So evil spirits are the ones that came out of the giants once they died. That was their punishment. They would remain on the earth. And those are the main ones that people see or talk to and are influenced by, because they have been in this reality, in this world, since the very beginning. So imagine how much they know, not only of this reality, of human history, but also of people, if they, because they are also those who are called familiar spirits. So they are connected to families through generations, according to curses and all of that. So now the giants who have been born of spirit and of flesh shall be called upon earth evil spirits, and their habitation shall be on earth, because they could not go to heaven, they could not go to Sheol, for they were not humans, they were not angels. So they were stuck in this reality, and they hate it, and they hate us also. And their habitation shall be on earth. Evil spirits shall proceed from their flesh, because they were born of mortal men, and their beginning and their primary foundation was from the pure watchers. The evil spirits shall be upon the earth, and they shall be called the spirits of the wicked. The habitation of the spirits of the heaven shall be in heaven, but upon earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits who were procreated on the earth. So whatever spirit was procreated on the earth would be a terrestrial spirit, therefore earthly, sinful, wicked, evil. The habitation of the spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but upon earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits who were procreated on the earth. And it says, note the many implications of verse 3 through 8 regarding the origin of evil spirits. Note that they stay upon the surface of the earth and are made reference to in Revelation and some other end time predictions. Yeah. Like we see in the book of Revelation, there are certain angels trapped in the river Euphrates, and they will be released during the plagues of the end times. Verse 9, the spirits of the giants shall be like tyrants. The spirits of the giants shall be like tyrants. It says here, the meaning of Nephilim is fellers, well, those who fail. Also translated as bullies or tyrants. So they will be fallen ones. The spirit of the giants shall be like tyrants, which shall afflict, oppress, invade, combat, and destroy it upon the earth. Which is very interesting, because there are certain people who for the ages have acted just like we are reading here. So they could be descendants of or possessed by those who act this way. How? Like tyrants who afflict, oppress, invade, combat, and destroy upon the earth. And they shall cause lamentation. And that is why a lot of times when we speak about the Illuminati, the 13 families of the Illuminati and what they do on this earth, when you say it to a regular person who has not much knowledge of scriptures and stuff like this, they would not believe you, mainly on the fact that they wouldn't dare to act like those evil people. So they're not able to come out of their own environment, their own head, their own heart, to understand that there are certain people who have no heart, who do not think like we think. So that's when they reject it. They say, how can there be so like people as evil, as you're saying? How can there be people who just kill because they like it or just to make money? And all of that they do and they have been doing for ages, worshiping these evil spirits and being possessed by them. The spirit of the giants shall be like tyrants, which shall afflict, oppress, invade, combat, destroy upon the earth, vaccinate, and some other things. So, and destroy upon the earth, and they shall cause lamentation. Though they shall not eat, they shall be hungry and thirsty. Though they shall not eat, they shall be hungry and thirsty. Meaning the spirits, the evil spirits, once they are spirits, they cannot eat, but they would be always hungry. That's why they possess people, so that they can enjoy the eating. When a person eats, that's why fasting is so important, because to fast will help you to release certain entities which are stuck just to feel the pleasure of eating, drinking, and sinning, for those who live a life of sin. That's why they end up possessed easily. And when you don't sin, those spirits are like, what am I doing here? What am I doing around this person? He's boring according to their views, because they want the pleasures of the flesh. So I repeat, that is one of the reasons why fasting is important when it comes to getting rid of evil spirits, for they are always hungry. And if you hunger a little bit, then they go away, for they see no point in being there. So, though they shall not eat, they shall be hungry and thirsty. So let's go to Luke 11:24. 11:24, it says, when the unclean spirit, when the evil spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest, and finding none, he says, I shall return to my house from which I came. Because while they're outside of the body of a person, they are without rest. They are restless. They are going back and forth looking for rest and pleasure. So when they cannot find it, they say, well, I'm gonna go back to that body in which I was. So they try to enter. And if the person is with the Almighty, they cannot enter again. But if the person has left the Almighty, who helped them to get rid of that spirit will enter with a lot of friends, or friends of the spirit, which are other evil spirits, of course, and the situation will be worse. That's it says here. And when he comes, he finds it swept and decorated. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that man becomes worse than the first. So when a person receives redemption or a release of evil spirits by the mercy of the Most High, if that person doesn't change his ways, then his end will be worse than the beginning of it. He will end up with 7 worse demons than the other one that he had previously. So here we see the importance of persevering till the end. Nothing should lead us astray from the truth, because even if you don't think of evil spirits, this will be the result of a person that goes away from the Father. The last state of that man becomes worse than the first, plain and simple. So going back to Hanoch, Though they shall not eat, they shall be hungry and thirsty, and they shall cause damage, and these spirits shall rise up against the sons of Adam and against the women, for they come forth from them during the days of slaughter and destruction. So amazing that evil spirits actually come from women from the very beginning, because they came from the giants, and the giants came from women who had relations with angels. And also, as it says here, and they shall cause damage, and these spirits shall rise up against the sons of Adam and against the women, for they come forth from them, women, during the days of slaughter and destruction. So also connecting with the fact that we see in the book of Revelations that they will be released in these end times, in the days of slaughter and destruction, the great tribulation. So chapter 16. After the death of the giants, when their spirits depart from their bodies, their flesh shall be destroyed before the judgment. Here there's a comment, let me read it. If they had died in the flood, we would find fossils of them, which there are, but they burned them, they destroyed them. There are a lot actually. And I was watching some videos and seeing some information about that a couple of days ago of, oh, let me remember, in Ecuador, the country Ecuador, there's a place where they found a bunch of giants, and there are stories, amazing stories, but obviously the supposed scientists, they don't want to see it, they don't want to hear it, so they don't talk about it. But there's some great stories regarding giants in Ecuador, the country. And after that led me to another country, which also, I think it was the United States, because there are also a bunch of stories in the United States regarding giants. So not only a couple times that there have been stories of giants alive still in this time, but mostly stories of bones. So most giants died during the flood, and there are fossils, but they don't show them to us, of course. But let me just continue with the comment. If they had died in the flood, we would find fossils of them, or the flood would have been attributed to their evil and not men's. Also, the evil that men started to do, reason why the flood came, was learned from the Malachim, from the watchers. So they were part of it. Also, the earth was made for men. Man is the head of this reality, even though after sinning, Lucifer became the God of this world, as they say it. But man was supposed to lead this world. So by accepting what the Malachim gave them, it is man's fault. Just like when man accepted the fruit of the tree from Eve, sin entered through man, not through Eve. So that's the reason why the flood came, because of men, because they chose to act like the angels taught them. Also, the scripture said there were giants in those times and later. So before the flood and afterwards. So there's no doubt there were giants before, and they were killed, many of them, but then there will be also giants afterwards. And another important point is that, just a second. Let me see. If they had died in the flood, we would find fossils of them. I already spoke about that. Or the flood would have been attributed to their evil and not men's. I explained why it is attributed to men. I forgot the thing that I was going to say. Hopefully I remember in a bit. Then it says flesh in scripture is the term for race also. And 15:10, chapter 15:10 states that these evil spirits will come forth from women then before the judgment. This will likely be by implanted clones which have no innate self but can harbor such a disobedient evil spirit. So pretty much saying that they would come back to this earth, even receiving bodies through females, through women. And the person here says that there will be clones, and obviously that is a big possibility, but I don't think it's the only possibility of how these evil spirits could enter this reality through women once again. In fact, some claim that the Rephidim, which are a type of giant that we see in scriptures, some claim that they were evil spirits that were able to receive bodies once again. So reincarnated giants, pretty much. The Rephidim, that's what some call them because of the name, what it means. But I also agree with the fact that they are making clones nowadays. And since those clones don't actually have a soul, the part that would act as the soul would be the actual evil spirits. So those bodies, those clone bodies would be the perfect homes for those evil spirits, like vehicles for them to be in this reality. And that is why they are the tyrants, like I was saying, of nowadays. The tyrants which shall afflict, oppress, invade, combat, and destroy upon the earth, and they shall cause lamentation as they are doing. So, oh yeah, I remember, thankfully, to the Father. Remember also that through the flood, many of the giants were petrified, and they were huge, as we saw last week. So many of the giants became actual mountains, and that's why there are a lot of mountains in the world that have faces, that have shape of bodies, and you can search for that. It's very interesting. There are mountains with the shape of a whole body or a face. The most amazing ones are the ones that have faces, and there are several around the world. And it is said also that precious stones actually come from the bodies of the giants that were petrified. So, for instance, the rubies from the blood petrified, the blood of the angels. And since they were a mix of angel and human, then that would be the reason why precious stones have a spiritual quality to them, because they would have come from the bodies of semi-spiritual beings. So I'll continue. I was on verse 1. After the death of the giants, when their spirits depart from their bodies, their flesh shall be destroyed before the judgment. Thus shall they perish until the day of the great consummation of the great judgment, in which the age shall end for the watchers and the irreverent, and ye shall be totally consumed in the lake of fire after the great judgment, which is the final judgment at the end of the 1,000 years that are about to start. But they will be destroyed even before that, meaning during the end times. After the death of the giants, when the spirits depart from their bodies, their flesh shall be destroyed before the judgment. Thus shall they perish until the day of great consummation of the great judgment, in which the age shall end for the watchers and the irreverent, and ye shall be totally consumed. So now to the watchers who have sent you to pray for them, that in another age they might inhabit the heavens, say, in heaven have you been. However, secret things have not been revealed to you. You have not known but a reprobate secret. This is very important. So since Yahweh knew that they were going to rebel, Yahweh did not reveal the higher things to them. What he revealed to them was actually nothing, in the sense of, for instance, how Hillel taught how to interpret the scriptures, and that became the Talmud, the oral Torah, or the oral law. That's why they would fulfill the commandments according to the interpretation of the flesh, by following just the letter. For the angel that spoke to them and told them how to fulfill it, he himself had no knowledge of the true understanding of it, which was brought through Mashiach, who is the truth. So he gave us the true understanding of Torah. Yet when they were listening to an angel, they were receiving a reprobate secret. So it's a reprobate way to fulfill the law, pretty much. Now we're talking here about the watchers. The Halel is a different type of angel, but I'm just saying the similarities, and they're both angels. Now, in this case, like I said earlier, they were given knowledge, all the knowledge regarding that which they were created for. So they didn't know everything else. They knew everything regarding what they had to do, their part. In this case, watch humans, take care of humans, pray for them. And I repeat, since Yahweh knew that they would rebel, Yahweh did not reveal to them the higher things. So in heaven have you been, however, secret things have not been revealed to you. This is important because the scripture says that the things that Yahweh revealed to us through Yahushua and through his Ruach HaKodesh were not revealed to the Malachim. And they wish to be able to see upon the things that we are seeing through his Ruach. So that is confirmed by what we read here. In heaven have you been, however, secret things have not been revealed to you. You have not known but a reprobated secret. And this you have related to women. So Yahweh is saying, I told you a secret and you went and told it to them. That showed me that I could not tell you the true secrets, which is important also to keep that in mind when we have secrets and mysteries and we want to share them. We should test them first, see how they treat the smaller things. And as it is written, he who is faithful in the small things will be faithful in the big things. So he who is faithful, even when he was in error, will be faithful when he receives the truth. But if you see somebody who was in error and is not faithful even to that error, then how can he be faithful to the truth? So, for instance, the error of Christianity, of Christian doctrines, works as a filter. Because if a person is happy with error, is happy with falsehood, then that person may remain there. But if a person remains true to truth, to honesty, to the Almighty Creator, he will begin to see the error and the falsehood that will lead him out of it into the truth. So it says, in heaven have you been, however, secret things have not been revealed to you. You have not known but a reprobated secret. And this you have related to women. By the hardness of your heart, and by that secret have women and mankind multiplied evils upon the earth. Say to them, never therefore shall you obtain shalom. So, 1 Peter 1:12, verse 12, but I will read from verse 10. Concerning this, well, let me show it to you guys. Concerning this deliverance, the deliverance through Yahushua HaMashiach, the prophets have sought out and searched out, prophesying concerning the favor to you, searching to know what sort of time the spirit which was in them was pointing out concerning Messiah, when it was bearing witness beforehand the sufferings of Messiah and the esteems that would follow. To whom it was revealed that they were serving, not themselves, but you, in these matters which now have been announced to you through those who brought the good news. So listen to this final part. In these matters which now have been announced to you through those who brought the good news to you by the set apart Ruach sent from heaven, into which the Malachim long to look into which the messengers, the angels, long to look into. So they're not able to look into what the Almighty has revealed to us through the Ruach HaKodesh. They were not given the higher secrets. They were given to us. Those who followed the angels and the secrets that they had and gave to humans ended up rejecting Messiah, for they didn't see the connection between what they were taught and what Messiah was teaching. but they didn't understand the separation, the difference between what they had and what Mashiach is. So the angels were not able to look into that which we can now look into through the Ruach HaKodesh. So going back to Hanok, I think there was another verse that I wanted to also read. In heaven you have been, however, secret things have not been revealed to you. You have not known, but a reprobated secret. Obviously, also the other thing I mentioned, I don't think it's necessary for me to go and read it. If you guys want me, I'll go. But the verse that says that the letter kills, but the spirit gives life. The letter kills when a person interprets the scripture through his flesh or the reprobated secret of angels. There are people who just, for instance, I would say, well, there's a spirit of error in Christianity that leads them to the wrong doctrine, the false doctrine. In Judaism, they pretty much follow an angel that is giving them a reprobated secret. So one religion in this case would be following a reprobated secret given to them by an angel, and the other ones would be following doctrines of demons given to them by the spirit of error. And that's why there are different religions also, because some follow angels that are fallen, some others follow evil spirits or demons. And these you have related to women by the hardness of your heart, and by the secret have women and mankind multiplied evils upon the earth. Say to them, never therefore shall you obtain shalom. So that's how the chapter ends. There are some questions here, I think. Caves in the USA, in Montana, and the Smithsonian Institute covered it all up. Yeah, the Smithsonian covers a lot of things. That's the one I hear all the time making cover-ups. Do you think through video games online, the entities can be contaminating our kids? And TV shows, scary shows? It is there. Well, yeah, pretty much, but it depends on how vulnerable the person is also towards those things, in the sense of, well, we're talking about kids, so that's why we should be careful regarding what the kids watch. But the older you get and the more knowledge you have, you, well, at least I believe when we look at things that are in the TV and stuff like that, we look at it with a different eye than most people. We look for those messages, we look for the symbolism, we look for those evil spirits that are trying to influence, in order to see what the other people are seeing and being influenced by. But obviously a kid doesn't have that preparation, doesn't have that knowledge, so he will be influenced right away, sadly. Plus, the TV was created in a way that, or the way it works pretty much, is that the first time you see TV, it takes some minutes, but the second time it takes a lot, a lot less time, and then the third time and over, it is automatic. The fact that we enter a state of hypnosis pretty much, unless, I repeat, we are watching with a critical eye. Because if we are conscious that they are trying to program us, then we will see it differently. Then when you see it as entertainment, it is entering and taming the person. Entertainment, they enter and tame the mind. Ment is from mind. So when you see it as entertainment, is a big issue. But when you understand that it is programming, it has an agenda behind it, and all of that is a bit different. Plus, I remember that there are certain parts in movies that no matter how old I am, if I am watching because of what is written, if I'm watching a movie and some violence comes on the screen, I try not to see it to avoid those images in my head, even though there are already many in it in my head because of what I watched before I started to do that, right? But nowadays, because of those things that we have come to know and because what scripture says, I tend to avoid watching like very sensual things or very violent things. Pretty much those are the two that I avoid. When there's too much blood, too much hate, too much destruction, in the movie, either I fast forward a little bit, and if I cannot, I just concentrate on something else. And sometimes when they also get all sexual and all of that, I avoid that for obvious reasons. So yeah, it's very important. I know it's very hard. I understand it's very hard, but it's very important to watch our kids when it comes to what they are watching, and explain to them why it's bad to watch certain things so that they can learn to choose. And if you explain to them, most of them will see that as a responsibility that you are giving them, and they will feel important in the sense of knowing that they must do something um, that you told them. I mean, the fact that you respect them enough to tell them the reasons, because most parents just say, you do this because I tell you. And the kid is like, okay, as long as you don't see me, I'll do it. But if you explain the reasons why, then they'll act different. But remember, they're still children, so we need to sometimes repeat and explain more. And also, the way we explain is very important, right? For their children, sometimes we may explain in a very complicated way, so we must put it in simple terms. And once again, with video games, it's just a matter of like choosing correctly, because obviously there are a lot of bad video games out there, and I know there are some who that may be um, entertaining, using that word once again, but we must understand that they could influence us in a bad way. So spirits pretty much enter that they can enter many ways. I mean, remember that in, for instance, in English they call um, alcoholic beverages spirits. So spirit enters through anything that you may allow it to, but the problem is when it controls you. That's why it is not a sin to drink wine or strong beverage, but it is a sin to get drunk through it by not controlling it. When it controls you, that's a spirit controlling you. The good thing is that because of entering through a liquid, it also goes away with time. But then a person may become a slave to it and may be looking for it more and more every day and from the morning and all of that. So it's pretty much the same with everything else that may become addictive, like video games for some people. So as long as you can control it, as long as you can teach your kids to choose correctly and control it, then as long as they can do it, I would say it's fine. And I repeat, choose correctly, because there are some that just not. um, so let me see if there are questions in the chat. So let's, and well, yeah, for instance, just to explain it in a very simple way, I know the same subject, but people who watch now almost anything on TV or Netflix, stuff like that, like 95% of movies and TV series have an agenda, and they must include homosexuals and the woman pretty much being the hero, acting like a man most of the time, which is very sad. And several things that happen all the time now when you watch movie. So through just that, people start to get influenced by what they're seeing, thinking that that is life, because life imitates art. So, well, they claim that's art, but they are presenting it as art. So people imitate it even unconsciously. So that's a way in which those spirits that cause that are able to enter those people when they accept that influence. So that's a way in which those spirits that are being promoted through those shows can enter a person when that person accepts the influence of it. So that's why it's so important to understand what we're watching and why we're watching it. So let's read the next one. And this has to do with a tour through Sheol, which is where the dead go, the souls of the dead. So let's read. Chapter 17, verse 1. They raised me up into a certain place where the inhabitants had the appearance of a burning fire. So the inhabitants of that place were like flames, a burning fire. We could say they were covering flames because of hell, or their bodies were actually made of fire itself. So they raised me up into a certain place where the inhabitants had the appearance of a burning fire, and when they pleased, they assumed the likeness of men. So yeah, they're entities that are like a fire, made of fire, but they can assume the likeness of a human. They carried me to the house of the tempest upon a mountain, the top of which reaches unto the skies. And I saw the mansions of the luminaries and the stores of the stars and the thunder at the extremities of the abyss where it was deepest. I saw the mansions of the luminaries and the stores of the stars and the thunder at the extremities of the abyss where it was deepest. That is where there was the bow of fire and its arrows in their quiver, the sword of fire and every species of lightning. Pretty much he was taken to the source of all those things. Remember that the stars, for instance, go around and around above our heads. So when they go away from us, they get closer to the, well, the extremities of the earth where he had been taken. Plus, let me see here where it says the extremities of the abyss where it was deepest. So we also saw that perhaps he was already taken outside of the firmament, and so pretty much the point is that the stars would look a lot different from the other side, and also the fact that they go around and around, there would be a part where they would pretty much begin their cycle, and that part where they would begin their cycle would be seen as the store of the stars, just like we will see eventually that the sun goes through 6 doors that are in the firmament, and it goes through 12 houses. So to understand that, like, the houses are the constellations in which the sun is for 30 days. So continuing, verse 4, then they carried me to the waters of life and unto the fire of the west, which received all the settings of the luminary orb. I came unto a river of fire, whose flames flowed like water, and emptied itself into the great sea westwards. I saw all of the great rivers until I arrived at a great darkness, and I went towards where all of flesh migrate, meaning Sheol, where all the souls go after death, after their flesh dies. And I went towards where all flesh migrate, and I looked at the mountains of the gloom of winter, and the place towards which all the waters of the abyss flow. Remember also that, which was part of the point that I was trying to make with the other thing I said, Yahweh separated the waters from above from those below, as we see in in Genesis 1. During the second day, he separated the waters. He placed some above the firmament and some under the firmament. However, under the earth, they come together. So they kind of flow above and under and above and under. So above the earth, they come together, the waters of above and the waters below. Once again, like I was saying, in the heavens, everything is one. So when they, like, outside of this reality, the waters from above and below come together, which is pretty much what he's saying here. And I looked at the mountains of the gloom of winter and the place towards which all the waters of the abyss flow. I saw also the mouths of all the rivers in the world and the mouth of the abyss. Remember the connection between the the abyss and the water, since in Genesis, once Yahweh created everything, the water covered the face of the abyss or the abyss. So I saw also the mouths of all the rivers. We see in Genesis how Yahweh created 4 main rivers that would come out from Gan Eden, the paradise, and then would bring water to the whole world pretty much. I saw also the mouths of all the rivers in the world and the mouth of the abyss. So that's how that chapter. So let's read 2 more and then I'm done. All right. So 18, chapter 18, verse 1. And then I surveyed the receptacles of all the winds, perceiving that they contributed to adorn the entire creation and the foundation of the earth. I then surveyed the receptacles of all the winds, perceiving that they contributed to adorn the entire creation and the foundation of the earth. I surveyed the stone, which is the angular stone of the earth. So it would be the representation of Mashiach, the cornerstone of the earth in the literal sense, but in the spiritual sense, obviously, is Mashiach, the word through which Yahweh made everything. I surveyed the stone, which is the angular stone of the earth. I also looked at the 4 winds, which come from the 4 corners of the earth, from the 4 malachim that are there. I also looked at the 4 winds which bear up the earth and the firmament of heaven, And I saw how the winds extended the veil of the heavens in the heights. And I saw how the winds extended the veil of the heavens in the heights. One way to understand this is how the winds bring, in a way, the weather, and also could said to bring the veil of darkness, meaning night. And I saw how the winds extended the veil of the heavens in the heights, and how they hold their post between the heavens and the earth, constituting the pillars of heaven. The pillars of heaven. So heaven is on pillars. Why would heaven be on pillars unless heaven was solid? Yet they say heaven is just like an atmosphere, or several of them. Something that we can go through, that is pretty much like air. And it makes no sense, because they say that space is a void, and there can be no void next to something filled with oxygen unless there is a solid barrier between the two. So how can there be no solid barrier between earth and space, according to what they claim, yet space is a void, yet we have oxygen? And they also speak of the hole that there is, according to the ozone hole, which we could also think, how can there be a hole when there is nothing solid? But anyways, we believed it, right? So, and I saw how the winds extended the veil of the heavens in the heights, and how they hold their post between heavens and the earth, constituting the pillars of heaven. Constituting the pillars of heaven. And I saw the winds that cause rotation. The winds that cause rotation, which, listen, not rotation of the earth. I saw the winds that cause rotation, which caused the sun, the orb of the luminary, and of all the stars to set. So there is a type of wind. Remember that in Hebrew, wind is ruach. So every time that it has said wind, we could substitute it for ruach, or spirit. And it is the spirit that moves all things. We are able to move because there is spirit within us. If we lose the spirit, we're dead. So everything else in the world has a spirit that makes it move. So that's why it has been talking about winds and winds and winds that make everything happen, pretty much, because we could replace the word wind with ruach, or spirit. So we could also say here, and I saw how the spirit extended the veil of the heavens in the heights. It is also the spirit that puts a veil on those who are not supposed to understand, while takes the veil away from those who Yahweh wants to reveal himself to. And how they hold their post between the heavens and the earth, constituting the pillars of heaven. And I saw the spirits that cause rotation. This spirit, once again, because it is the spirit that causes movement, but also we could, in a way, mention here the magnetic field and other fields that are part of this creation that help the sun and the stars move. In this case, the stars are in the firmament, so they move with the firmament, and the firmament rotates above our heads, just like the sun does. So I saw the winds, or the spirits that cause rotation, which cause the sun and all the stars to set. They set from our perspective because they continue spinning, yet when they go far away from our view, they seem to set according to the laws of perspective. So I saw the winds that cause rotation, which cause the orb of the luminary and of all the stars to set. And over the earth, I saw the winds that support the clouds. I saw the path of the messengers in the confines of the earth. I perceived the firmament of heaven above it. Then I passed on towards the south. And I saw a place where burnt both by day and night 7 mountains formed of splendid stones. And I saw a place where burnt both by day and night 7 mountains formed of splendid stones, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. Here, this person interprets these mountains as planets, and it is a possibility, for there are only 7 planets that are seen through the human eye. There are a couple more that can only be seen through a telescope, but there are 7 that can be seen with the human eye. So, well, and when I mention 7, in that sense, it includes sun and moon, for they are luminaries and they have their own movement, unlike the stars that are in the constellations, as when we place the 7 over the menorah. However, if we take the sun and the moon out of that equation, we would have 5, but then we would include the 2 that are seen through the human eye, through telescope, then we have once again 7. So the 7 mountains can represent those 7 planets. Remember that planet is a Greek term that means, well, back in the day, planet was right next to star. So wandering star is what a planet means. Wandering is planet. So planets are wandering stars. They are not other Earths, as a lot of people think, because of what we were taught when we were young. And I saw a place where burnt both by day and night 7 mountains formed of splendid stones. Remember, and for that, let me go to Ezekiel 28. Here, Yahweh is talking to Satan. And it says, verse 14 of Ezekiel 28, you were the anointed cherub that covered. He was a cherub, which is the singular for cherubim. And I placed you were on the set apart mountain of Elohim. So he mentions the mountain, and then he says, you walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Normally, this is taken as Lucifer going from planet to planet. You walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. He was able to travel the heavens, not as they tell us in NASA regarding what they claim of space, in a different way. He was able to go from angel to angel, and the angels are represented by the stars. The fallen angels mainly by the wandering stars, where they have a different cycle. So it says, you walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. After saying, I placed you, you were on the set apart mountain of Elohim. Interestingly enough, it is said that Jupiter used to be called Yahupatet, which would mean Yahweh is the Father. And it is a planet that represents righteousness, justice. In Hebrew, it's called Tzedek, which comes from Tzedekah, which is justice. Or well, could be the masculine of Tzedekah, which is feminine because of the last hey. So, interestingly enough, Jupiter eventually became Zeus when it comes to the religion of the Greeks and the Romans as Jupiter. So Romans, Jupiter, Greeks, Zeus. And Zeus happens to be, according to Revelation 2, happens to be Halel, Lucifer, Satan, to whom this is being said in Ezekiel 28. So it is interesting that Hanoch is saying, let me read that real quick. And I saw a place where burnt both by day and night, 7 mountains. So 7 mountains, that would be the 7 planets. So each planet like a mountain that was burning, because we see them lit. We see them at night because that's when the sun doesn't cover them with his light. So at night, we're able to see the stars. But when we are at night, the other part of the world has day. So when we have the night before us, the other part of the world is having light. And obviously when we have day, they have night. My point with that is that the stars are always being burnt, as it says here, by day and by night. Because when we have the night, the others have the day, so they are still burning for us when we have night to be able to see them. So I saw a place where burnt both by day and night, 7 mountains, form of splendid stones. Mountains, form of splendid stones. And we read in Ezekiel, I placed you. You were on the set apart mountain of Elohim. So this could be taken as a planet, specific planet that Elohim was using to represent him. And like I said, a lot of people believe that would be Jupiter. Then he says, you walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. And in Hanoch, we are reading that those mountains were made of precious stones of fire, because it was being burnt day and night. So we see a clear connection between Ezekiel 28 and Hanoch. Hopefully it was understood. Let me know if there are any questions. And then it says, verse 16, by the greatness of your trade, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. So I thrust you from the mountain of Elohim. Listen to this. And I thrust you from the mountain of Elohim. He threw him away, threw him down, which is part of what will happen in Revelation 12. But I will show another verse that is very important with this, which I just said. So I thrust you from the mountain of Elohim, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. If we go to the book of Acts 19:35, this is very important. Listen to this. It says, and the city clerk, having calmed the crowd, said, men of Ephesus, what man is there who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is the guardian of the temple of the great female mighty one Artemis, and of that, well, this sad this translation. I'll show it just a second. And of that which fell down from Zeus. And of that which fell down from Zeus. Let me show it in the concordance. Acts 19:35. It says, and when the town clerk had appeased the people, he said, ye men of Ephesus, what man is there that knoweth not how that the city of the Ephesians is a worshiper of the great, as they call her, goddess Diana, and of the image which fell down from Jupiter, the image that fell down from Jupiter. If we see the concordance, when it says image, there are some others that translate the stone that fell down from Jupiter. Some claim that that is the stone that Muslims now worship as the Kaaba, the stone that fell from Jupiter. So a meteorite, that's what they would say, fell back in the day. Somehow they knew that it came from Jupiter. It was a stone of fire coming down from Jupiter, just like we read in Ezekiel 28, that he was thrown out of the stones of fire from his mountain. And from where? From Zeus. And who is Zeus? Jupiter. So some others write Jupiter, but look how interesting it is that they translate, most of them translate Zeus. It is here, you're seeing the concordance, right? Is here. But how do they call it? Diopetes. This Dio is what in Spanish now they call Dios. So Dios come from this Dio, which happens to be Zeus. So that is one of the reasons why in Spanish we don't use the term Dios. We see it right here in the concordance as Zeus. So Dios fell from Jupiter as a stone of fire, which the people of Ephesus took as an idol and ended up worshiping it. And some claim it is the same exact stone that Muslims worship nowadays. In fact, let me just go and hopefully I'll find it fast. It says Muslims, just like those of Ephesus, worship the moon, because Allah is what they would call the moon god back in the day. So Allah is actually the moon god, as they would say. And I say God because not really an Elohim, but anyways, they worship the moon and the sacred stone, as they call it, which fell from Jupiter, as we just read in Acts 19:35. Diana is the moon. So they worship the moon and Jupiter. And the next image, this is the black stone on the corner, the west corner, the east corner of the Kaaba, which they go and kiss. And they call it the right hand of God. Imagine that. So they call the stone the right hand of God. We know that Mashiach said that he would sit that he sat at the right hand of Yahweh. In Isaiah 14, we read that Lucifer wanted to sit there. That's why he's going to, next to Azazel, appear on this earth as the Christ, because he claims to be the one. So that's why the stone that fell from Jupiter to represent Lucifer as the fallen angel, Zeus, fallen to the earth, who claims to be at the right hand of the Father. So they call the stone the right hand of God. They worship it, they kiss it. Approximately 1,300,000,000 Muslims bow down in the direction of the stone at the Mecca 17 times a day in 5 sessions of prayers that they do. So they have 5 sessions during the day in which they bow down 17 times throughout the day. Over 1 billion Muslims. In Hebrews 10:12, we read that Messiah, having offered himself once as a sacrifice for sins, he has seated at the right hand of the Father, of Yahweh. And then we also see it in Psalm 118, verse 16, Ephesians 2:20, being Mashiach, the cornerstone. Mashiach is the cornerstone. But they got a literal stone from Jupiter representing Zeus, whom they call the right hand of God, and they put it on a corner, the east corner of the Kaaba, as the cornerstone. So they are supplanting the Messiah with that stone. And Muslims claim not to be idolaters, yet this stone shows otherwise. So that may be the exact stone that is mentioned in Acts 19:35. So that is the one I wanted to show. Now let me, since Brother Celio asked about that word Zeus, let me just go and find that image also. Here, as you can see, it says that it is in the Oxford Dictionary that Zeus, the Greek Zeus, is the same as Dios. So that's how they would write back in the day. And there was also in the concordance another way of writing Zeus that looked more like we would write it nowadays. But here, as it says, this, which you see behind this verse from the book of Revelation 2:12 and 13, which says clearly that Satan is Zeus. It doesn't mention Zeus, but it says that Satan sat where the congregation of Pergamon was, and the congregation of Pergamon was in Pergamon, and that is where the temple of Zeus was, which is what you see behind the verse. And inside, you could find this written. So it is the temple of Zeus, and what you find inside was the name Dios, because it is the same. So that's why it says this inscription, this archaeological inscription, is found in Athens, Greece, and it is known perfectly that Dios is the name, the personal name of Zeus. So yeah, you can look for that in the Oxford Dictionary under Zeus. So like I said, the word that we just saw in the concordance was actually a mix of two words that was referring to the stone falling from Zeus or Jupiter. So let's go back to Hanoch. We were on verse 9, and I saw a place where burnt both by day and night 7 mountains. I repeat, like the 7 planets, form of splendid stones, which are connected to the stone that fell from Jupiter and to the stones of fire through which Lucifer would walk. 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. That is interesting. Now I feel like going in, because remember that I made an image also of the menorah, which has 7 lights. The sun is right in the middle. So the right and the left would be the the south and the north. In Hebrew, front and back is east and west. Right and left is south and north. So the fact that it says 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south, or well, it would be the front and the right. But what I was saying regarding the menorah is that the sun is right in the middle and it has 3 planets on the right and 3 planets on the left. And interestingly enough, it is written there midday, which in midday, the sun is right in the middle, just like in the menorah, which 3 on one side and 3 on the other. Then verse 10 says, this way, of those that were towards the east, one was of a multicolored stone. One was of pearls, and the other of antimony. And those towards the south were of red stone, of a red stone. The middle one reached to heavens like the throne of Yahweh. When it comes to the planets, if you look at the planets, the stars even, you will see that they look similar, but they have different kind of light sometimes. There are a lot that, since they are so far away or so small, you can barely see them. But there are some that will shine a lot. For instance, the Star Series, which I mentioned a lot, for I read some about it because of my name. The Star Series has pretty much all the colors. And if you look at it, it changes all colors. If you look at Mars, is red, like it says here, of red stone. Venus is like a huge lamp in the heavens. So depending on the planet, the light that it shines. So kind of what is being said here, if we do take these stones and mountains as being the actual planets. Of those that were towards the east, one was of a multicolored stone. One was of pearls, and the other of antimony. And those towards the south were of a red stone. The middle one reached to heaven like the throne of Yahweh. Remember that I mentioned how the last is the Son of Righteousness. The sun is right in the middle of the menorah. And here in the book of Hanoch, we just read that the throne looked like the actual sun. So the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of Yahweh, a throne composed of alabaster, and the top part of the throne was of sapphire. The top part of the throne was of sapphire, because the heavens are blue, because they are as sapphire. And remember that the heavens are the throne of Yahweh. That's why the throne of Yahweh is as sapphire, as we read also in Ezekiel 1 and Ezekiel 10. The middle one reached to heaven like the throne of Yahweh, a throne composed of alabaster, and the top part of the throne was of sapphire. I saw too a blazing fire hanging over all the mountains. Blazing fire, like what we see when we look at the planets. And if we were to look at them from way closer, it would look like Hanoch is describing. And I saw a place opposite of a great territory. I find interesting how it is written here. I saw too a blazing fire hanging over all the mountains. So what we see is under the stars, because they are above us. And it's saying that the fire was hanging from the mountains. So the fire would be under the mountain. So he was taken to see the stars from above. So he would see mountains. But then he would see fire hanging from the mountain by day and by night, which is what we would see from under the stars, which is where we are. So I saw too a blazing fire hanging over all the mountains. And I saw a place opposite of a great territory. And there the waters were collected. Then I was shown a fountain from a profound abyss between columns of heavenly fire. And I saw radiating, it says here, and I saw radiating within them the heavenly columns of fire, which descended. So I read it wrong. When it says them, it's referring to the heavenly columns. And I saw radiating within them columns of fire, which descended to the bottom, of whose height and depth were immeasurable. Below this abyss also I perceived a place which had neither the firmament of heaven above it nor the solid ground underneath it. This is what I was mentioning earlier regarding how he was taken outside of the firmament. He was taken to a plane that had no firmament above it. Imagine how weird that could be, since all we know is having the firmament above us. So below the abyss also I perceived a place which had neither the firmament of heaven above it nor the solid ground underneath it. neither was there water abundant on wing. Instead, the spot was desolate and terrifying. So it didn't have solid ground underneath it. It could have something different than regular ground, and obviously not solid, like sinking. Like that's what we used to see in movies and everything back in the day. Those parts of sand that which people sank and got stuck in it. So I'm just saying that would be not having solid ground. There are several ways in which something cannot have solid ground. Doesn't mean that there was no ground to step on. So the firmament of heaven above it, nor the solid ground underneath it, neither was there water above it, nor anything on wing. Instead, the spot was desolate and terrifying. And there I looked at 7 stars as great blazing mountains. And when I inquired about this, the envoy said to me, this place is the limit of the heavens. So since the firmament came all the way there, he was seeing the limit of it. So above it, there was no firmament for him. And there was no solid ground, as in within the firmament, for he was outside of it. And there I looked at 7 stars as great blazing mountains. And when I inquired about this, the envoy said to me, this place is the limit of the heavens and earth. It has come to be the prison of the stars and of the host of heaven. The stars that revolve around the fire are those that transgress the commandment of Yahweh before their time arrived. This is important because it is talking about certain angels, and like I said, it said 7, and we know, I just mentioned the 7 planets that represent fallen angels, for they have a different cycle, orbit, or route than the regular stars, which are stuck in the firmament, and they're always going together around above our heads. Yet the planets have their own orbit because they represent fallen angels. And remember, the planets are also stars, for they are wandering stars. So there I looked at 7 stars as great blazing mountains. And when I inquired about this, the envoy said to me, this place is the limit of the heavens and the earth. It has come to be the prison of the stars and of the host of heaven. The stars that revolve around the fire are those that transgress the commandment of Yahweh before their time arrived. For they came not in their proper season. Here, even though it's talking about the rebellion of the angels, it's also mentioning how the stars would eventually would not come on time. That is why by now, when we begin the first month in the heavens, we still have the constellation of Pisces or Pisces. So the stars that revolve around the fire are those that transgress the commandment of Yahweh before their time arrived, for they came not in their proper season. This is very important, as we will see eventually with the calendar, because a season, when it comes to the year, obviously is spring, summer, fall, and winter. So that means when we begin spring, the stars that are above us are not the ones that were supposed to be there at the beginning of spring. So they are not appearing on their proper season. That's why they will be punished, because they didn't fulfill the commandment. Also, when it comes to the angels, instead of the stars that are in the firmament, the angels ended up coming down to the earth instead of waiting for the time when Yahweh would allow them to come to the earth, as I was mentioning earlier regarding what Michael is going to do for the angels that want to go to the next world. So the stars that revolve around the fire are those that transgress the commandment of Yahweh before their time arrived, for they came not in their proper season. Therefore was he irritated with them and bound them until the period of the consummation of their crimes in the secret year. In the secret year. Because since they started to come late, then the calendars would get mixed up and confused throughout humanity. And therefore, the year, for instance, the year 6000, which is when the sixth seal happens, would be a secret year because everybody would be on a different calendar. Therefore, was he irritated with them and bound them until the period of the consummation of their crimes, the consummation of their crimes in the secret year. And let me go read Proverbs 8:25. Proverbs 8:25 says, before mountains were sunk, before the hills, I was brought forth. Talking about wisdom, going back to Hanoch. Therefore was he irritated with them and bound them until the period of the consummation of their crimes in the secret year. Before mountains were sunk, before the hills, I was brought forth. And here on top of this, it said, the prison of the envoys that deceived Christianity, which in a way is true. However, what it says later, I don't agree with it completely. The 7 envoys of the convocations of Revelation. But not all the messengers of the convocations or the congregations of Revelation are wrong, because of the 7 congregations, Philadelphia does right. So the angel of Philadelphia is Michael. So this should refer only to the 6 that didn't teach the true doctrine to their congregations in Revelation. Reason why I would incline for other 7 angels, like the 7 Malachim under Lucifer, to whom he gave the different empires of the world, the 7 heads of the beast, pretty much. So to finish with this verse, chapter, I repeat, the stars that revolve around the fire are those that transgress the commandment of Yahweh before their time arrived, for they came not in their proper season. Therefore was he irritated with them and bound them until the period of the consummation of their crimes in the secret year. So I'll read chapter 19 so that we finish here, and next week we'll do from the chapter 20. Chapter 19, verse 1. Then Suriel said to me, which means my rock is the mighty one, Suriel. Then Suriel said to me, here shall be the envoys who have cohabitated with women by their own accord. Here shall be the envoys who have cohabitated with women by their own accord. Their spirits, assuming many diverse appearances, have corrupted themselves and caused the sons of Adam to err, so that they make slaughter offerings to adversaries as to the power. This is important because look how in the book of Enoch, we already read how people would do sacrifices for the fallen angels, thinking that they were doing it for the Almighty Creator. As when we read in Amos, the prophet, in Hebrews, regarding how during the 40 years in the desert, Israel would sacrifice to Moloch and Kium, not to Yahweh. So to Lucifer, who is Moloch, and Kium, who is Samael, Saturn. But as I have explained, Samael was created with time, when time itself was created. That's why Samael is connected to Kronos. Kronos seen as the god of time. So it says, their spirits, assuming many diverse appearances, have corrupted themselves and caused the sons of Adam to err, so that they make slaughter offerings, to adversaries, as to the power, as to Elohim, until the great day of judgment. So all sacrifices that they do of animals, they're not doing it for Yahweh, because when they started doing sacrifices of animals, they did it through the reprobate secret that an angel received regarding the sacrifices mentioned in the Torah. However, that was for us to understand the sacrifice of the lamb and the sacrifice of the 2 witnesses. But since humans needed an example in order to understand the spiritual, Yahweh allowed humans to make those sacrifices in order for us to understand the actual sacrifice. Hope that is understood. It's very important. So that they make slaughter offerings to adversaries as to the power, until the great day of judgment, in which they shall be judged, and they shall meet their end. Whereas their wives, who were seduced by the watchers, shall be consoled. In some cases, the watchers would appear, as it said there, many diverse appearances. They would appear to these women as their husbands. So they would not know they were having sex with angels, according to certain writings. And I mentioned that because what is being said here regarding them being consoled, which wouldn't make sense if they were doing it on purpose. So, whereas their wives who were seduced by the watchers shall be consoled. But also notice that the word consoled is only in one of the translations. That's why it is written that way. And I, Hanoch, I alone saw the likeness of the end of all things. Imagine at the very beginning, he was shown the very end. Yet not any mortal man did see it as I saw it. So he saw the very end. He saw the great day of judgment for all these watchers. At least he was told about it, clearer than most. So that's how, well, also the fact that they will be in prison in that place that Hanoch was right there shows that they won't be within this earth. They won't have part in this reality in which we can enjoy solid ground, beautiful firmament, unlike the place where he was, where there was no solid ground underneath it and there was no firmament above it.